Story time with Uncle Sage. Story time is all the rage. Well, it's story time with Uncle Sage, and every story's true. That's why parental discretion is advised. Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to Story Time with Uncle Sage. So today I'm going to tell you about my time in the Citizens Police Academy. Dun dun dun! You didn't know that Sage was a cop? No, not really. It's kind of clickbaity because I don't know. I was thinking about becoming a police officer back in the mid '90s when I first, started. When my kids started being born and they were little, and I was thinking about trying to find some good income and good job. And it was before I went into the ministry, so I was kind of floating. It was after I left the music business. And I was like kind of a lay minister. I went to church and was active. But I was running a recording studio at the time, and I was thinking about maybe becoming a cop. And I heard about this thing that the city was offering down in Texas. I won't say which city. But they were offering a Citizens Police Academy. And I guess their reasoning for doing this was liaison to get the citizenry involved. They figure anybody that would come to that's probably a good citizen. And also as a recruitment tool. So if you were thinking about becoming a police officer, you could go and learn more about it and join the Citizens Police Academy. And then at the end, if you wanted to, you could join the Citizens Patrol, which was a police-sanctioned group that would, assist the police in an emergency. And that sounded cool to me. At the end of it, though, I realized that what you'd end up doing is like directing traffic and stuff if there was a major emergency or wildfires, that by signing up on that, you kind of made yourself required to call to answer the call. If they call you, you have to come. You have to go out in the rainstorm and put on the yellow slicker and just with all day long with a flashlight. That's really what they want out of it. So I did not end up joining the Citizens Patrol, but I did go to the Citizens Police Academy, which was I believe it was pretty intensive. It was 3 nights a week for an hour a night. Right, so it was like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights, and it was a 6 weeks course. So it was 18 hours. Is that right? Am I figuring that right? I don't know. Anyway, it was a lot of instruction. There was also a test at the end that you had to pass, and if you passed the test at the end of the deal, you got rewarded by getting to go out to the police range and shoot. And they had a really advanced range like I'd not got to shoot on before, so that was an added bonus. I got to shoot their guns, and I got to shoot some full automatic weapons, and that's kind of cool. Some military, police only weapons. So overall, it was a great experience. I had fun in the course during the class. It gave me insight into the police force. One of the most interesting things that I gleaned from that course was this, and it might make you cringe. It's going to make you cringe when I tell you what I'm about to tell you. That an officer was talking to us. One of the nights, one of the 1-hour deals was about, okay, so you want to be a cop. And in it, they talk about the requirements, the background checks, the drug testing, they talk about all elements of it, the interview, what kind of background they look for, physical requirements, the phys ed test, all of this stuff that you're required to go through. And they talked in length. I would say half of the hour was about the psych test, the psychological test. And apparently in this city, and I imagine, I was told in that class that kind of psych test is required by all police forces. And then the guy tells me the most amazing thing. He says, but if you tell the truth on your psych test, you won't get hired. That the psych test is so exclusionary that if any red-blooded American male, right, And now that sounds wrong because there's female cops too, but this really applied to men because of the way the test was designed, right? If you were ever an adventurous person or a mean boy when you were growing up, they got mean girls, they had mean boys too. If you were ever one of them, that there's questions in there to designed to boot you out, which is like most rowdy boys. I would, and we talked about it. I'm like, I wouldn't pass the psych test. And so you're saying, Sage, you can't pass the psych test? No, I'm saying that this police officer told me no one can pass this psych test, and unless you're a pacifist, essentially. Because they ask you questions like, have you ever killed an animal before? Of course, my hand shot up and I went, you mean hunting or, euthanizing? He said, it doesn't matter. If you answer yes to that, you flunked. They don't want to hire any police officer that's ever killed an animal, right? They ask you things like, have you ever been in a fight? If you were ever in a physical altercation where you hit another person, you have to lie on that unless you have a record of that incident, and also you won't get hired. So they don't want you just when you got caught for hitting somebody, but they want you to admit whether or not you ever even hit somebody. Now, not all psych tests are alike, but what I understand is that they mostly are. And so, I shot my hand back up again to this guy, and I said, so you're telling me that every American police officer, by and large, the vast majority, lied on their psych test to get the job? And he looks me in the eye and says, yes. He said, that's a problem. He says, it's politics involved in the police hiring policies. And he said, so because there's no way to check that, it's just, so most guys are just going to go, I just tell them whatever they want to hear, right? And I said, so, I shot my hand back up and I said, so I've euthanized 3 dogs that were dying, and I've farm slaughtered dozens, if not hundreds, of animals. And I think my tag mark at that point in my life was about 4 or 5 deer, and too many doves, rabbits, and squirrels to count. And so I said, I just listed off my kill count of animals. And he said, yeah, you say that. Not only are you not going in, they'll probably put you on some kind of list. And then I laughed and said back to him, people don't know that when they sit down and eat a hamburger, somebody had to shoot that cow or kill it or club it or the cow didn't die of natural causes and then we ate it, right? That chicken leg you're chewing on there, somebody had to kill that animal, pluck off all its feathers, rip off its leg, dip it in oil, and give it to you. So, a very interesting course. I learned a lot in that class. One of my favorite times in the class was talking to the game warden, where I found out something very interesting in the state of Texas, that even if you're being attacked by a poisonous snake, and you're in a state forest, a national forest, or a state or national park, right? And you by any means kill or harm that snake, even if it's trying to bite you, even if it's after your kids, even if you almost stepped on it, it's in your campsite, that if you kill a snake, that's against the law. That's against the law. Snakes are protected. We live in a world where snakes are protected. And I got to tell you, I went to this class probably 20 years ago. And more than 20 years ago. It was like I said, it was the late 90s. So, 22, 23 years ago. And anyhow, and another thing I found out is that a lot of kids, shoot birds with BB guns. Now, my mama taught me, and she demanded of it because she was kind of a pacifist. But she'd wring a chicken's neck and make dinner. Don't get me wrong. She's a country girl. But she would demand of me growing up that if I killed it, I had to eat it. So I didn't kill any birds because Dad told me, you don't kill them birds. They taste awful. You'll have to eat them. There ain't nothing to them, but it's just a lot of work, and there's no meat on them, and the meat tastes vile. You just don't. Like he knew, like he eating some birds in his life, Hey, you do what you got to do to get through the Great Depression, right? They used to club little birdies like that and put them in a pie whole. Just, get the feathers off of them, put them in the pie whole, and not even try to cut them up, or, I mean, they gut them, and then just put like 20 birds in one pie. You ever hear that? People used to eat different in the old days. I think it was called starling pie. But anyway, like pot pie, chicken pot pie, but made out of tiny birds. And the bones, you would just pick through them as you ate, I guess. Spit them out? I don't know. How'd I get down this road? But, but there's a lot of kids whose parents don't really feel that way, who shoot these little Tweety birds all the time, right? I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day. I won't name him. And he was telling me about shooting a particular kind of bird that is real prevalent in his area. And then I happened to be reading the Oklahoma hunting law manual. And turns out that one bird he's been shooting is an endangered, it's a protected species. And so this is what I found out from the game warden during this course, is that pretty much every Tweety bird, every kind of critter you can think of is protected. And if you really, the only animals you're allowed to kill, and you can't even do that in the state parks, are like mice and rats. Those they'll let you kill because they consider them pest animals. And rats in particular are imported. A lot of people don't know that North America didn't have rats. The rats came from Europe on ships. They just hitched a ride over here, and that's why we have Norwegian rats, which is the number one rat in America is a Norwegian rat, if you don't count the demon rats. But it sounds like a horror movie. Demon rats! Anyway, yeah, this police academy course was a lot of fun. And the people that were there were a hodgepodge of people. They were people like me, men who were thinking about joining the police force. There were a lot of retired people there, There was a lot of, back then, World War II vets were in that group that just wanted to, and they did sign up for the police, auxiliary police. And, and later on during, like on the 4th of July fireworks and everything, I looked out there and sure enough, Citizens on Patrol sticker on the side of one of those guys' cars, and he's got a flashlight out there on 4th of July moving people. And I'm like, hey, what's up? And, hey, how are you doing, Sage? And so this crowd of people it was probably 20, 25 of us that went through this, 18 hours of training. And one person stuck out in particular, God rest her soul. And she was kind of zany. And she went to Bishop T.D. Jakes' church out there in South Dallas, down, not Eagle Mountain Lake, was it? Not White Rock Lake. What's that lake down there? Anyway, it's 408 and I-20, right in that area. But anyway, it used to be the Eagle's Nest, I think, and then he bought it, T.D. Jakes' place, built an orphanage out there. It's a big complex. And she was one of the few white people that went there. And actually, on a side note, I ended up, after this, doing a record for one of his youth leaders who was becoming a rap artist, and that's how I got the call from BB and CeCe Winans, producer, which I think I've told that story. If not, I should. But at any rate, there was this zany lady, and she went to this black church, and every time I hear Travis Tritt's, not to talk bad about the dead, but every time I hear Travis Tritt's song, I think it's Travis Tritt, I like my women just a little on the trashy side, with their pants too tight and their hair's dyed, something like that. I always think of her because she definitely had that Tammy Wynette, but with bleached black kind of big 80s hair, but it was out of style. It was late 70s Dolly Parton hair, and tight clothes and gaudy costume jewelry and lots of makeup. Tammy Faye Baker with black hair. Anyway, but she was kind of simple. It kind of became a theme throughout the class that, when her hand shot up, everybody kind of went, okay, time for the stupid question. I know that sounds mean, but I'm just being real. I'm telling the story as I lived it. And so, this lady, one of the times we're talking about crime in the area, we're talking about crime prevention, homelessness being a problem, and she pipes off in the class and starts telling us all about how she Sometimes God tells her. Now, when someone simple talks about God talking to them, I sometimes question whether they know what they're talking about at all, right? Whether God's there, it could have been the devil's talking to them. Just talk, I don't trust their discernment. Okay, and did I call her stupid or dumb? I'm sorry, but she just was not. What does Trump call them? Low IQ people. But anyway, she starts talking about how sometimes God tells her that she needs to help homeless people, and she helps them by scooping them up in her car, taking them to her house, giving them clothes and a bath and a shower, and feeding them, and letting them stay with her till they get on their feet. And that she's usually got one or more people like this staying at her house all the time. Her kids were grown and moved out, and her husband, she's one of those gold digger women, I guess, that married an older rich guy, and he died young. Not young, he died while she was still relatively young. And so she was all alone in the world. Her kids had moved off. She had grandkids someplace else. And she's probably only about 45, maybe 50 at the time. And we all of us, security-minded men, all the old vets and the cop running the class, and everybody just went, whoa, you can't do that. Someone's going to take advantage of you. You have to be more careful than that. And we're like, do you have a gun? Do you know how to defend yourself? And she's like, I don't believe in guns. I wouldn't hurt a fly. Besides, God tells me it's okay, so I'm sure I'm safe. And so we just kind of all shook our heads, and I even pulled her aside because we talked. Obviously, for whatever reason, I've had people tell me that I'm the kind of person people want to talk to, and my channel, people say it's like talking to an old friend, and so I tend to get cornered, and I'm nice, so I don't want to hurt people's feelings, and people talk to me, so I end up establishing relationships to one degree or another with everyone in the class. And a lot of times low IQ people can see that I'm smart, so they jump in on me and they want to sit next to me and copy off my page. So she was kind of like that. I guess she might have been trying to cougar me too, because I probably wouldn't, but about 30, around 30. Anyhow, I don't even think about that, but now after I've seasoned and wizened up, that might have been a part of the issue. But at any rate, I pulled her aside after that class, and I went, look, you can't do that. You can't bring, homeless derelicts into your house. Sooner or later, they're just going to kill you, take your stuff, steal your car. It's just awful. About 3 years later, all over the news. She picked up a homeless guy down by the freeway, brought him to her house, fed him, let him shower, gave him a fresh set of clothes, and parental discretion advised, cover up your ears if you're sensitive. He raped, murdered her, and stole her car and all of her money and split. They found him 20 miles away in a Hotel 6 with her car parked out front. And I'm not sure how that played out. You could probably look that story up. When I tell you stories where there's a big connection like this, I got another one that involved a guy I knew that held his wife at gunpoint on I-5 for hours with, surrounded by police force. It was an armed standoff. He did about 15 years in prison for that one. But I think maybe 10. He didn't kill anybody, but so you can check out my stories. You can find the story. You can find that lady's name. Find a picture of her. I better described her pretty good. Although they probably gave her the church picture where she looked a little nicer, a little more granny-ish like potentially. They always pick the good pictures for you after you've died. I don't know why I laughed there. That's not right. I guess it's just I laugh at death. If you ever catch me laughing when I'm talking about death, it's a little creepy, but it's because I really have taken to heart and I believe what the Apostle Paul said. Death, where's your victory? Where's your sting? And because I'm immortal. This body's just a vehicle, that I'm riding in, and when it's worn out, I'll pop out of here and maybe I'll get a new heavenly body, right? get a new Jesus vehicle. It's kind of hard to, and that I guess she lived that way too, and she wasn't afraid. But in the end, it got her. You have to defend yourself in the physical and the spiritual realm in this world. You can't just do one and not the other. But that's my philosophy. That's why people have referred to me, and I've called myself a warrior monk for years. You'll catch me on this channel saying prayers like "God save our republic," and then in another video, I'm showing you how to chop a pumpkin in half with a sword. A pumpkin about that size, about. So I am, that warrior monk. But, once again, I had a great time at the Citizens Police Academy. It was fun. They did the guys run the program were into it. So that helped. They weren't just like phoning it in, reading it off a script, and now I got to go. It was my turn to do it. So see ya. No, they were into it. It was a break from their routine. They got the night off, but still got paid, and they got to play with us. And they let them play with all the toys. So we were going outside to do something. The instructor had set us up, and it was going to be we were going out to the parking lot. He was going to show us something, and we were totally unaware of what was about to happen. And this is where the night we were studying SWAT tactics. And so the SWAT group, the whole SWAT team was in an armored vehicle, and they come squirreling down the road at high speed. They just pulled up in the parking lot, went sideways, spun around backwards like that, and this back door opened, and like 8 guys in body armor and weapons come out like this, and they throw a flashbang right at our feet. Boom! Flashbang the whole group of us, even the old people. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to give somebody a heart attack. I was just clapping, and I mean, I knew what was up. I was like, this is awesome, right? And they came over, and they did not point their guns at us, but they pointed their fingers, at you, and they were, keep your hands where I can see them, and just make you feel like you've been swatted, right? And they put me up against the cop car, and they patted me down. And then they didn't cuff me, but then they, I think the guy remembering stuff as I tell the story, which is kind of funny. Because, you think I'm going to tell that story, but then you forget elements until you're in it. But he whispers in my ear, he says, play along. And he acted like he cuffed me, and I held my hands behind my back, and he touched my head and put me in the back of the squad car that was conveniently parked right there and open. And he locks me in the back of the police car. And that's when I realized for the first time in my life that there are no door handles to open the door or roll down the window from the back seat of a police car. And I'm a little claustrophobic because I was buried alive as a child and barely survived. And I think I've told that story. If I haven't, I should. So, and I probably will get around to telling it. Even if I told it again, I'm going to start telling these stories a second time on my alternate channels. So you'll get another updated, better looking, better sounding version of the original stories that were done on broken cell phones in my van down by the river. But anyway, so that was a fun night. He finally come and let me out. I was skitzing a little bit. I won't lie to you. I was like, hey, bro, bud, come here. Open the door. Let me out. Let me out of the cop car. I think that's when I decided I was going to straighten up and fly right and never end up in the backseat of a police car, and I never have. And I promise you I never will. And someone thinks they're going to stuff me back in there, I probably won't play along. It was, don't end up in the backseat of a police car if you're a little claustrophobic. It's why I don't want to go to jail. Horn. Is it Jack Horn? Jim Horn? John Horn? Jack Horn? I don't know. Famous Western outlaw, bad guy, cattle wrestler / hitman against cattle wrestlers. Tom Horn. In that movie, they finally, spoiler alert, they finally catch old Tom and they lock him up. And he has views of the Rocky Mountains from his cell, and it just drives him crazy like a caged animal. One time I went to a wildlife exhibit in Oregon. I think it was the Oregon Aquarium, and they had this outdoor exhibit with sea otters in it. And there was this one sea otter in this group of sea otters. And he would swim over here, do a turn, swim over here, do a turn, come back over, come to where the hole in the aperture was where you could see him real good. And he'd come up to the glass where all the people would walk by, and he would close his mouth and close his eyes and open his mouth. Like maybe they were going to throw some food, and then he would go and do the same thing. And I watched him, and he would do it hour after hour after hour after hour. Like a dog that just goes around the outside of the perimeter the whole time. He just wants out. He just wants out. He just wants out. So, yeah, I'm like that. I'm not going to jail. You're not putting the handcuffs on me. That's it. Kill me. Don't put me in jail. Because I ain't scared of dying, because I know Jesus. So that's it. And how would Jesus feel about that? I don't know. He allows us our weaknesses. I will say that. I don't know. Unless you've been buried alive, shut up. How's that? But I did the whole course. I never missed a day. I absorbed it all. I made notes. I had a binder I carried around for years. Because in it, they talked about the Constitution. They talked about warrants. They talked about how all that works, the Fourth Amendment. I learned a lot. I learned a lot in that course. If you get a chance to take that, one of those free courses, it can be valuable just as a citizen. And but the big day came, and we got to do our final shooting, right? We got to go out and to the gun range, out by the water treatment plant. That every police force has their own range, and they have toys, range toys, that vary. Coiling up back there, my stove's going. It's got me breaking out in a sweat. That's good. I don't need to put no more wood on it. But yeah, they have toys that are fun if you're a shooter. And so they had this one course with these metal not trigger activated, but like switch activated live pop-up targets. And they put these photographs of real humans. And some was like bad guy pointing a gun at you. And some was a guy that just kind of looked like me that might be sketchy pointing his finger at you. So if you shot him, you're screwed, right? You should have shot an innocent person. So it was reactionary targets. And if you hit them, they would go down. If you didn't hit them, they would just stay up. So they only went down if you hit them, and there was targeted areas they set them up in front of that would cause them to go down. It's like the head, if you hit the head, and they would line them up. It was really well done. You know what? It was the best day of shooting in my life, if you want to know the truth. And I've had some fun. I don't know. There was some times that we did some vehicle stuff in IDPA where we went out on these big ranges, these big complete, like either U-shaped or a complete square with a angled berm. So these big berms, outdoor berms. Imagine being inside of a pond or something, or dry creek beds. You could do the same sort of thing up on a smaller scale, but just a backstop in every direction. So you can set up 360-degree shooting. That was fun. The police force range wasn't set up like that, but their reactionary targets were really cool. And, it was about as good as the video shooting ranges I've been to. And those are expensive, where they play out video scenarios. You use your actual gun. You shoot through a mesh. And the computer-generated video images in the back respond. They'll curl up and fall over like you shot them. If you miss, they just keep coming at you. It's kind of cool. I've had some cool shooting experiences. That's why I wouldn't mess with me. Because I've just obsessed over it. I've done a lot of stuff. I did IDPA for years and years, working elbow to elbow with world champion shooters, just gleaning every little tip from them. I've forgotten more about shooting than most of you know. That's when it comes to actual combat shooting. I ain't talking about firearms. I ain't talking about gunsmithing. I know nothing about none of that. I don't load my own. I'm just I'm just an old half-blind gunslinger. But anyway, we're out there shooting. You may think different of me after you hear this story. But I really wowed them on the police range. Wowed them like, what the guy say? I wouldn't want to be in your family. And here's why. I had to learn this. Now, I'm not as bad anymore, but I'm still very a reactionary shooter. Where my eyes go, the bullet goes. And I respond to threats. And so the first few targets, I looked like a real BA. I hate to cuss on my channel, but, bad butt. The first few times that I got to shoot, I looked really good because they just pop up the bad guy with the gun, right? And a lot of times it'd be two shots. The first one would either be the head, right? And the second one would be the gun. It looked like I was shooting a gun out of their hands. But like I said, it's the bullets. I just draw instinctually and I start shooting when I've assessed a threat, and the bullets go where I look. So if you wiggled your foot like that, wiggled your foot down there on the ground and it had something shiny on it, I'd probably shoot you in the foot. But the first thing you're going to look for is that weapon, right? So all my targets had a shot in the head and a shot in the hand. It was like bang bang, and they were very impressed with my shooting skills. They were actually the cops there were in awe of me, and they did try to recruit me. I told them, look, I killed too many animals to be a cop. I guess they don't want killers on the police force. I can see that. If so, then once you kill a human, you ought to be kicked off. But that's my opinion. Anyhow, people would be less likely to reach for that gun if they knew that by pulling the trigger they automatically lose their job. Wouldn't that be something? You shoot, you're fired. You fire, you're fired. That's my new policy. So you wouldn't use it unless it was either that or die, and then you'd use it to defend yourself, and you wouldn't be likely to go off on people. But at any rate, back to the bad part of the story here, and I fixed the problem since then. It took years of discipline to fix the problem, but still, don't let someone take you hostage around me. You might be in as much trouble for me as them. So here's what happened. They started pulling up the woman in front of the man, and he's got a gun, targets. And now I'm firing 3 shots. His head, his hand, his gun, her face. When I did that, he went down, he got the target, he brought it up, and he showed it to the whole class, and he goes, I would not want to be Sage's wife, let me tell you. And I just kept doing that. It showed me that under stress, any threat's toast, which is a good thing, but at the same time, you got to be careful. Now, since then, I've become very good at careful shot placement under pressure. I've had people stand on both shoulders, one in each ear, and scream at me while I'm shooting these reactionary targets now, these kind of pop-up targets, swingers, spinners, zip lines, surprise stages with people yelling obscenities in your ear while you're doing it. And a whole crowd of people back there laughing and carrying on because, you're the entertainment. Shooting with other shooters is the best way to become an expert if you want to know the truth. You really can't do it on your own. You need help. You need people watching what you're doing wrong and then pointing it out to you. And the more unrelenting and rude they are, honestly, the more effective it is. But I learned a lot in my Citizens Police Academy class. If you get a chance to do that yourself, I highly suggest doing it. And it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot, and I got to shoot automatic weapons that day too, which was really cool. So we'll see you next time on Storytime with Uncle Sage. Well, I hope you like my story time. I'm sorry if my songs don't rhyme. Well, I hope you like my story time. You can come on back. Will y'all just come on back? Will you all just come on back? Story time with Uncle Sage. All right, this is for real, right here. Hello,